Hi everyone. In this video we're going to go over several of the functions that are available in Excel. There's a wide variety of functions available and I can't say that I've even ever used them all by any means, but today what we're going to look at is the if statement, the payment statement, sum product, sum if, the today function, and then the VLOOKUP function. So those are the ones that we're going to go over in this video. So first, let's start out with the if statement or the if function. In this example, I have this Excel spreadsheet, and I notice here in cell H4, I need to figure out if the boat is going to have a stove. If its galley will have a stove. And the information that I've been given is a boat must be able to seat 8 or more people, 8 or more, to have a stove in the galley. So reading that information, that gives me the clue that what I'm looking at in this function is I have to consider the number of seats in the boat. So in this example, you can see that it does have 8. So I'm going to assume that yes, this boat would have a galley with a stove because the information said 8 or more. So the way I would equate that into more of a mathematical formula is I would figure out if whatever is in D5, so we're just starting with this one item and then we'll work our way down as we copy our formula down. So whatever is in D5, if it's greater than or equal to 8, because that's the information we were given 8 or more. So if it's greater than or equal to 8, then yes, it will have a galley with a stove. The other part of the if statement is if it's false. And if it's false, we'll say no, it won't have a stove. So let's take a look and see how this works out. So I want my first if statement to appear in H5. So I'm going to build it here and then I'll be able to copy the formula down to these remaining items in my Excel spreadsheet. Okay, so I'm going to start with the if function. You can always use this function here, insert function, which is right on your formula bar, or you can go up to formulas and do it that way. You can look for whichever category it falls under, or you can use the insert function here. I'm just kind of used to using this one, so that's what we'll go with. Okay, now, so the insert function dialog box comes up. If I didn't see that the if function was already here, I could type the name of the function in here and it would find it. So I could just type in if and click on go. And it's already here, you can see, but it brought up some other things as well. So if you don't see what you're looking for, just do a search on it. So this is the function that I need, so I'll go ahead and click on OK. All right, and now we can see, and I'll just move this down a little bit, you can see that the if function is always made up of the 3 parts. The first part is our test. The second part is if that test is true, what do I do? And if the test is false, what do I do? So let's again go over what our test is going to be. Again, looking at the information that they gave me, I'm trying to figure out if, again, whatever is in D5, so I'll go ahead and click in D5. Notice how it starts filling in the information for me. This is a great reason to actually use the function dialog box because it helps you build your formulas until you're more familiar with how the formulas work. Okay, so I'm looking at D5 because it's the number of seats. And what I need to figure out is if it's greater than or equal to 8. So when we say it like that, we're going to type it like that. So I'll use the greater than symbol on my keyboard, which is Shift and then the period key. And then I'll find the equal sign. So you'll notice it's reading if D5 is greater than or equal to, and we're using the number 8. Okay. Now you can already see it starting to build my formula for me. So it now knows that it's true because this is equal to 8, right? So what happens if our value is true? Then what we decided that we'll just say yes, it does have a galley with a stove. Literally, you could put anything in here. You could put stove, not stove. This is completely up to you. But in this case, we'll just go ahead and type in the word yes. And then what happens if it's false? If it's false, it does not have a stove. So I'll type in no. And notice once I typed in yes and click down to the next item, Excel automatically puts quotations around my yes because it sees it just as text rather than some type of mathematical computation. So you can see here that Excel is telling me that as I've made this formula, the result is going to be yes, which is what I want. So I think I'm on the right track. So let's go ahead and click on OK. And we can see that yes, it came out correctly. And we'll take another look back up here in our formula bar so you can see that we have the if function and then parentheses, and then our test is here, D5 equals 8. Right, that's our test because we're trying to figure out whatever is in D5 if it's greater than or equal to 8. And then you see a comma, so this is the syntax of the formula. So if you see it here, you're going to separate the three parts of the if statement by a comma. And then you can see this is what happens if it's true. We will return the word yes. If the statement is false, then we will return the word no. And then we always close with a parenthesis. Okay? So that's basically our if statement. It always has the three components. You do your test, and then yes or no, or whatever is going to happen if it's true or false. So now I can use my handy fill handle. Notice my cursor changes to that small black plus, and if I hold down on my mouse pointer, once that cursor is changed, I can pull all the way down, and look at that. It fills it in. Let's take a peek over here. In this case, I got the answer of no, and if we trace back over, it's because the seats are less than 8. Basically, right? There's 6, so that definitely fits our if statement. So that is an if statement. Let's move on to examples of a SUMIF and a sum product. So in these functions, basically you're combining two different things, and you can just kind of tell by the word. So in this one, we're combining an if statement, and then we're also putting in the sum part of the statement. So we're going to look for something and we're going to give it certain criteria. If it finds it, then we want to go ahead and add it together. So we're just combining two different things. For the sum product, as you can imagine, we're going to multiply and then add things together. So it kind of takes the one function does two things for us. Okay, so let's look at an example here on the SUMIF. So let's say that I wanted to look at the unit price, and I wanted to see if the unit price was greater than 25. And if it is, then I want to go ahead and add up the total price over here. I want to include it in my addition area. Okay, so we're doing the if first, and we're going to give it some criteria, and then it will search for what we're looking for given our criteria, and then it's going to add up the information in this area. Okay, so again, I'm going to go back to my insert function, and I'm going to look for SUMIF. I see it in my list. Again, if you didn't, you could just type it in here and click on go to search for it. Okay, so we'll move this a little closer. Okay, so the first thing is the range. What the range is, what it's comparing it to. Okay, so it says it adds cells specified by a given condition or criteria. That's basically what the SUMIF function does, and the range is the cells that you want evaluated. So in this case, we want to look at A4 through A6 because we're looking at, oh, I'm sorry, I'm on a different one. So sorry, we're looking at, D4 through D6. We're looking to see if anything in this range is greater than 25. So we've given it our range, what we want it to look for. And now we're going to say, is it greater than 25? And again, how you say it is how you type it. So I'll just use the greater than symbol and then 25. Okay, so we're just saying take a look in each one of these cells in the range that I've given you and figure out if it's greater than 25. If it is, then I'm going to have it add these items together, whichever ones meet the criteria. Okay, so let's take a peek over here. So you can see that when I selected D4 through D6, it automatically gives you the actual numbers over here. I can see my greater than 25, and then over here it has the other numbers that I'm looking for. They're all listed, but as you can see, they don't all meet the criteria, right? So let's go ahead and click on OK, and we get an answer of $147.26. So basically, based on our formula here, it looked in the cells D4 through D6 for anything that was greater than 25. So it would have taken this number and this number, right? It wouldn't have taken this number. So now it knows that I'm going to take this number over here, because this is where we're adding. We're adding the information that's in E4 through E6, right? So I would take this number, not this number, and I would take this number. So if you get out your handy calculator, sometimes when I'm first setting up a formula, I like to actually use a calculator just to make sure that I've set up the formula correctly. So if we take out our handy calculator and we add 6476 plus 8250, right? Yep. We will see, and I'm actually on my calculator, we will see that our answer is correct. It's $147.26. So it did not include the $74 in our addition. Okay, so again, this first part is range, is what we're looking for, what we're evaluating. Okay, and we want to know if anything in here is greater than 25. That's this part. If it is, then go ahead and include it in our addition. Okay, so that's the SUMIF. Now let's move on to the sum product. So again, it does two different things. It will multiply and then add several items, but using the same formula. So let's take a peek at how this works. So basically what I want to find out in this, and we're going to use this example again, is I'm taking the quantity over here, so I'm going to use this as part of my formula, and then what I want to do is go ahead and multiply everything over here and then add it all together. So let's go ahead and build the formula, and then I'll explain it as we go. So again, I'm using my insert function dialog box. I do happen to have some product here, so I'll go ahead and click on it. If not, just look for it if you don't see it. Okay. So in this case, it's asking us for something called an array. And basically, an array is just the range of cells in either in a row or a column that we want to incorporate into our formula. So the first thing we want to do is we're going to go ahead and highlight A4 through A6. And you can see it tells us what is included in our range that we selected. So we're taking that. And then if I go down to array number 2, I'm going to include E4 through E6. Now when you're doing these functions, the SUMIF also, you do want to make sure that you have the same number of cells that are in your first array and your second array. Okay, so now basically, and I can see here, oops, I made a mistake. I'm so sorry. Wrong one. But let me tell you what I did and then what helped me realize it. I looked over here and I saw $675, so it's already giving me the result of my formula. And I looked at that and I'm like, that's a little too high. So I realized if I do the line total, that it's already multiplied quantity times unit price and added all of those results together. So I'm really kind of doing things again. So again, sometimes this is really helpful to kind of give you a clue. So basically, so we'll learn from my mistakes. So basically, yeah, that looks much better. We're going to take the unit price. So we're taking the quantity times the unit price, and then we're going to add everything together. So basically what sum product does is it takes 1 times 64.76, and it gets that that total, right, which is 64.76. Then it moves on and takes the quantity of 6 times $12.38, so that's the 74.28, right? So pretend like we didn't have this here because we could have just added this together, but for sake of the example, we can pretend it's not there. And then we take the quantity of 2 and multiply it by the 41.25, so we get 82.50. Then once we've done all of our multiplication, that's when we're going to take those results and add them together. So that's basically what the sum product does. So it multiplies first and then adds those results all together. Okay, so we're going to click on OK, and we can see the result is $221.54. Looks much better than the $675. So again, use that information as a clue as you're building your formulas, or get out your trusty calculator. And if I had added up the information, I would have seen that I was way off and something was wrong with my particular formula, and I would need to go back and take another look at it to make sure that I had it set up correctly. So again, if we add all those together on our calculator, we get the same result. Okay, so that is the SUMIF and the SUMPRODUCT functions. Let's move on to the payment function. So in this example, you can see over here in cell B7 that I want to figure out, I may purchase a new restaurant, and my loan is going to be $550,000. The loan term is going to be 30 years, and the interest rate is 5%. So I want to figure out what my monthly payment will be. Well, Excel will nicely do that for us. So let's see how this works. So we're going to go ahead and use our insert function. Again, we could go to formulas, we could do either recently used or anything, and we could even look for things, but I just think it's so much easier to use the insert function box. Okay, so I do see payment down here. Again, if I didn't, I could just type in payment and click on go, and there it is. So we'll go ahead and click on OK. All right, so now we're just going to start filling in information. So you can see here my cursor's in rate, and it tells me the rate is the interest rate per period for the loan. Now, the one thing that you want to make sure when you're doing any type of loan type of calculation is that everything is based on the same time period. So for instance, in this example, they're dividing the 6% by 4, because in this example they're doing quarterly payments. Now we can tell that our term over here is going to be 30 years, so we're doing monthly payments on this, which is what we want to find out. Let's see. Let me make sure yeah, so we're going to figure out monthly payments. So our rate is in B6, that's our rate, but we want to divide it by 12. So I'm just using the /, that's the division. When I divide it by 12, that calculates our yearly interest rate into months. Okay, yeah, because we're trying to figure out what our payment is going to be each month. Okay, so that's why we're dividing by 12. Okay, now if I click down here, this is where I'm going to figure out the total number of payments for the loan. So I know that the term is 30 years. So I'll go ahead and click over here in B5, right? But since we're figuring out a monthly payment, I then need to calculate the total number of payments in months as well. So in this case, I'm going to multiply by 12, because 30 years, I need to figure out how many months are in 30 years, and you can see that it's 360. So now both of my calculations here are on the same time period, which is monthly, because I'm figuring out my monthly payment. Here we want to know the present value. What's the amount of my loan that it's worth, that I'm taking out right now? So our loan amount will be in B4. So that's basically it. Now you can see that there's some other information in here. We don't really need this one because we're trying to zero it out. So at the very end, we're just the loan information is going to be 0, so we don't really need that. And then the type, we don't need this one either. So we're just filling in these 3 items, okay? So I figured out the rate. I'm using the information in here, dividing it by 12. I'm figuring out the length of the loan, which is 30 years. So I have to multiply it by 12 to make sure I'm converting the years into months. And then whatever's in B4 is our loan amount. So let's go ahead and click on OK. And you can see that we get $2,952.52. Now the reason it's in red and you have the parentheses around it is because technically it's a negative number, right? Because you're going to be paying out that payment every month. So it's not like it's income. It's definitely an expense. So Excel automatically puts it as a negative number in the red with the parentheses indicating that it's being paid out. Okay, so that's our payment function. Moving right along, we just have one more, so hang in there with me. We're going to be looking at something called a VLOOKUP. So let's get over to the other example that I have. Okay, so in this worksheet I have some listings. It looks like house listings that we're doing, okay? And you can see that I have a listing here and it's listed under a certain agent number. Now if we look down here, I can see that I have all of my agents listed here by their number, but I want to know their last name as well. So let's take a peek over here. Notice there's a second worksheet. So I'll click on the agent worksheet, and here's where I have all of my agent information. So if I wanted to take a look at an employee number and then whatever that employee number, bring back the last name that's associated with that employee number, I can use the VLOOKUP function. So let's go back over to our listing worksheet. And we want to start in cell E20. Okay, so that's where we're going to have our first formula end up, and then we're going to use the magic fill handle. Okay, so basically, again, in the VLOOKUP, what I'm doing is I want to look and see whatever's in this cell, which is their agent number. So I'm just looking to see what's in this cell. Then I'll tell it to go over to the agent worksheet, look in that whole table, and bring back their last name. So let's see how this works. So if we click again the insert function box, move it over so I can see what's going on, and I see a VLOOKUP here, so I'll go ahead and click on OK. Alright, so we can see that we have again some information to fill in. So the first thing is the lookup value, and it says the lookup value is the value to be found in the first column of the table and can be a value, a reference, or a text string. So basically you'll notice that a couple things. It's the value, it's over here in this table, right? And it's also, and we'll take a peek when we move over there, it's the first value in our table that we're using as our lookup table. The other thing is that they need to be sorted in, like in this case, it's numerical order. If it was a text string, it would need to be in alphabetical order. Okay, so basically our lookup value is whatever's in cell D21, right? So we want to say, okay, we want to look up this number in our table. This number could be 103, it could be 105, you know, if they had a 105. So we're not typing in the actual number, we're just saying look up whatever is in this cell. So the next item is now I have to tell it where to look for the additional information. So the table array is the table that's going to contain all of this information. So I've clicked down here in table array, and I'm going to go ahead and click over here on the agent worksheet, and you can see this starts to form like a 3D reference because we're getting the information from a different worksheet than where our formula is going to be. So keeping that in mind, basically the table is this information here. We're not going to include the heading information, so we're going to start on A4 and include all of this information on the table. So now I can go ahead and let that go. So you can see that the table array is A4 through E9. Okay, and then the column index number, Remember that I'm going to look at the employee number back over here on my listing page, and I want to bring back the last name of the agent. So basically, when it's asking for the column index number, it's saying, okay, in this table, once I've found the information that you want me to look up, what column of information do I return? Okay, so we always, even though this is our lookup value, we're still counting this as column 1. This would be column 2, column 3, etc. So basically the column index number here is going to be 2 because I want to bring back the corresponding last name whatever employee number it found. So if I was looking for 133, it will bring back the last name of Burgess, which is in our second column of our table. Okay, so that can be a little confusing, but just think about, always you're starting from the left, first column, second column, etc. So that's always just a number of the column. So I'll go ahead and click in here, and I know it wants to be the second column, and notice that I've already got my result down here, which is good because I already know that 103 is Bido. It looks French to me, and I'm probably not pronouncing that correctly. So we don't need our range lookup, so we're just working with these 3 items here. So let's go ahead and click on OK. Perfect. So I can look up here and see that I used my VLOOKUP function. I'm looking at cell D21. Then I'm going over to my table, which is A4 through E9, and I'm looking at bringing back whatever is in the corresponding column number 2. Okay, so now if we use our handy fill handle and copy it down, that looks pretty good. So let's just make sure, like 168 is Duarte. Okay, good. Now, the one thing that I want to caution you about is in the lookup table, you'll notice that in this particular formula, I've specified the tables A4 through E9. But what happens if I come down here, let's say on this row? I click on it and I look up here at the formula. Oops, it's changed. It says A7 to E12. Well, if I go back over here, that would be A7 to E12. That's not my table. So what is it doing? As we're copying down, it's using relative referencing, right? So every time we copy it down a row, it's adjusting the table. And we don't want that. We want to make sure that the table always stays as A4 through E9, right? So the one thing we need to make sure to do, last thing, I'm going to go back to this first formula. I need to make our reference here to the table an absolute value so that it always points to A4 through E9 no matter where we copy it. Okay, so I can click inside of A4. Remember, you can use your F4 key, your function key on your keyboard, or it's perfectly fine if I click in front of the E. I can go ahead and just type in the $sign. So I just use my arrow to kind of arrow over one, type in that $sign. So the main thing is you want a $sign in front of the A, $sign in front of the 4, $sign in front of the E, $sign in front of the 9. That tells it it's always going to point to A4 through E9 no matter where I copy this formula. So now let's go ahead and click on, we'll just press enter. Same information, right? But if we copy this down, let's take a peek. So if I go to Burgess, now notice it's still pointing to A4 through E9. I'm going to do a Control Z real quick and just go back to this. Let's say that I was making more of a table, so I'm copying this down. Right now it says NA because I don't have a listing number here. But let's say I needed to look for I'll do the same agent number because I would have to put something else in the example if I wanted to use a different number. But let's say I wanted to use agent number 103 again. When I press enter, notice that it stays as NA, because if I click over here, it says, okay, well, you're telling me to look up whatever's in D27, which is 103, but now I'm looking at the table A10 to E15. Let's go back over here. So A10 to E15 isn't even in any of the information in our table anymore. So we've completely gone out of the table. So that's why you have to keep this as the $sign. So let's go back. We'll put those back in, and I'll just show you the example again real quick. So I'm just using my F4 key to do that. Press enter to accept. Go back to this one. Use my fill handle, and I'll just come down to here. Okay. Oh, I think because I love when I use examples and it still doesn't work. Because I have it as, because it's not in numerical order here. That's why. Darn. Bad example, but you get the hint. It wouldn't, by the time we copied it all the way down here, we wouldn't even be on the listing for the table, okay? So I'm just going to delete those items. There we go. I'm going to clear out the contents too, so it takes away the little lines. So anyway, so what you want to make sure when you're doing any type of VLOOKUP, any type of lookup, you want to make sure that whatever array, whatever table you're referencing, you must have the absolutes. Otherwise, you're going to start losing information as you continue to copy down. So we can see here it's still pointing to A4 through E9. Okay, so that's how you do work with a VLOOKUP function. So I believe it or not, I think we're done. So we've looked at the if function, the SUMIF function, SUMPRODUCT function, payment, and the lookup. Oh, one last thing here, and here you thought we were done. Let me go back to one other item. I forgot to put it in there. Okay, let's go back to this one. There is another function that inserts the current date wherever you want to put it. So I want to put the date in G3. I'll go ahead and click on my insert function dialog box again, and I can use this function right here, which is called today, and you can see that it says it just returns the current date formatted as a date. I can go ahead and click on OK. Now this is one of the few functions that don't actually need an argument. We don't have to put anything in here. We don't have to put criteria. We don't have to, nothing that we have to do to build this formula. So the formula is exactly this. It's equal the word today and then two opening and closing parentheses. Okay, so we're just going to go ahead and click on OK, and you can see that it puts the current date, which is the date that I'm filming this video. Okay, so that is finally the last thing on our list. So we looked at that when we looked up at the VLOOKUP function. So I hope that you have found this to be helpful. You can certainly rewind if you need to as you're maybe working through some of your other projects if you need a little refresher on how to work with some of these items. And don't forget that there are really good examples in your book, whether you're using the textbook or the ebook. There are some really good examples in the explanation parts of the book, so use that as a resource as well. Okay, so again, hope it's been helpful. Take care.